Yo, Matt, I got something to say.
Ah. Would it perhaps involve a little bit of street knowledge?
And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth. And the way that we measure that distinction is that we travel to Ukraine and we boomerang to Uganda. But ladies and gentlemen, we take the long way around. This podcast is indeed called Hey, Listen to This. And it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I'm the one. I'm the only. I am the one who heavily recommends adding ketchup to your mac and cheese to unlock a new flavor possibility, because you deserve to treat yourself, dear listener, and Matthew. Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, I used to put ketchup on my mac and cheese back when I was in grade school, so I'm not going to knock that hustle. Matthew James Durzik. And for those of you who don't know what we do here on Hey, Listen to This, it's right there in the title. Every week, me and Ryan take a music album, and we listen to it, then we come together to discuss our opinions on each track, and each line, and each lyric, and each note. Or something close to it. We don't go, vivisecting, it's the parallel rhythm or whatever it is. No, we talk about the music as we hear it. And as we discuss, we'll talk about tracks we like, tracks we don't like, things we like, moments that we thought stood out. At the end of the review, we give the album a rating out of 10, and then we recommend an album based off the album we just talked about, and then we pick another one, and thus continues the circle of life here on Hey, Listen to This. So, Ryan, with that said, we are in the middle of Black History Month, in the middle of February 2026, so last week it was your turn to pick. What did we talk about?
We decided to live forever by the words of Barty Strange himself. And by the way of living forever, we discussed the album Live Forever. And I was extremely happy that we were able to discuss that artist. That's been an album that's always sat in, at least my Bandcamp collection. And I played it a few times over the years, but I've never really taken the proper time to appreciate it. So it was an absolute blast for me to sink my teeth into that album. How about you, Matthew? Were you feeling the positive vibes from Bartiz last week?
I was. I was, again, going into that review very green and not really knowing what to expect, because up until you'd mentioned the name at the end of the Stevie Wonder episode, I had no idea who Barty Strange even was. But I gave it a listen, and I appreciate a lot of what I heard. Very eclectic, very daring, I would say is a good word for it. Daring is something that very much describes Bartiz and his music, so I'm glad we took a dive into that.
So, dear listener out there, if this is your first time tuning into an episode of Hey, Listen to This, or you missed last week's episode, do yourself a favor. First check out the album that we reviewed. It's a lot easier to listen to a music album as opposed to listening to a review of ours discussing the music album, and also gives you context to enjoy the review that we laid out for you in the previous review. But that was then. This is now. Matthew, we must progress into Black History Month of 2026. And we got a good one cooked up for the dear listener out there here today. So, Matthew, why don't you do the intro in terms of giving the listener the framework of what we're going to be talking about on this episode here today.
Gladly, I will do that. So this week, I went into this week thinking, okay, I have selected 3 albums in the 2 years that we have done Black History Month episodes here on Hey, Listen to This, and somehow all of them came from the 1970s, so I decided let's pivot away from the 1970s. So we're pivoting one decade ahead, we're heading to the 1980s, and we're heading into 1980s hip-hop territory. And we're going to be talking about a group that was once labeled the world's most dangerous group. That being the hip-hop group called N.W.A. Now, what does N.W.A. stand for? The W stands for with, the A stands for attitude, and the N stands for you Google it. So, N.W.A. Was founded in 1987 by rapper Eazy-E and producer Jerry Heller, who was the head of Ruthless Records. And together they compiled this group of rappers, which also included DJ and producer and fellow rapper Dr. Dre, fellow producer Arabian Prince, and also a rapper by the name of Ice Cube. And with that, they released their first single called Panic Zone in 1987. And for the record, Eazy-E specifically, as well as the rest of the band, originated from the city of Compton, California, which is a suburb of LA, and that will become very important later on. So they released their first single, Panic Zone, followed by the compilation sort of piece together album, kind of like they did in the 50s, where you just take all the singles from the years past and put them all together. That's what N.W.A. did with their first EP album type thing called N.W.A. and the Posse. And that, funny enough, features a couple tracks we're going to be talking about today as well, because they remixed them for the album that we'll be talking about today, and we will get there. And so, after that album was released, they added DJ Yella to their band. Then Arabian Prince ended up leaving after that, although he is featured on a couple tracks on this album. And then MC Ren, who was working as a solo rapper at the time, joined the group. And so, in 1989, after a couple years of rearranging, touring, and putting stuff together, they come out with the album that we are talking about today, the one, the only, Straight Outta Compton. Now, before we get into what music is on this album, we must recognize that this album is very much one of the most controversial records in music history. So much so that it will probably upset parents to this day, and is one of the few records in history, if maybe not the only record in history, to get a letter of cease and desist from the FBI. So that is what we are dealing with here today on Hey, Listen to This. We are dealing with this sort of origination of gangster rap, which, for the record, only was about a couple years old at this point when it was released in 1989. Hip-hop had just started to become a bit more mainstream with the likes of Public Enemy, Run DMC, I'll throw Houdini in there. It was becoming more and more of a cultural force and less of a novelty, as it started with in 1979 with the Sugar Hill Gang. And all of a sudden, you start getting rappers like Schoolie D, who is credited with having the first gangster rap song, which was PSK, What Does It Mean? That was in 1986. Then N.W.A. starts their thing underground in 1987. And eventually, we come to 1989. And again, rap was sort of teetering towards pop status, because around the same time, you also had the likes of MC Hammer starting to rise up. And it may not seem like it, but the year after this album, Straight Outta Compton, we would get the likes of You Can't Touch This and Ice Ice Baby. So, there was a bit of a divide that was going on. Now, some of the names you may recognize: Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, Eazy-E, if you're a little bit more into the hip-hop scene, as well as MC Ren. But together they were N.W.A., and that is what we were talking about today. So, before I describe my quote-unquote history with N.W.A., Ryan, I throw it to you first. What is your background with N.W.A. heading into this episode?
So, my background with N.W.A., it's basically very similar to like when we talked about like Public Enemy, X amount of reviews ago, and in terms of I always recognize N.W.A. as being a hip hop group, a prominent hip hop group. I was familiar with I'm familiar with Ice Cube, obviously, because I'm alive, and Dr. Dre for the same reasons, and easy for lack of a better descriptor. MC Ren, I was not as familiar with prior to diving into this record here today, but I think I've listened to Straight Outta Compton maybe once or twice in my musical journeys as being myself, but in terms of actively listening to N.W.A and actually having a proper relationship outside of recognizing that they're a prominent hip hop group, there's nothing there. I'm not actively seeking out N.W.A, and that's not for any negative reason. It's just it's never been on my radar. So I'm gonna flip the question back over to you, Matthew. Do you have a bit of a different relationship with N.W.A than myself?
Slightly. So it's not super different from what you described, although there is a point of reference into my discovery of N.W.A, and as it has been with many other artists I have chosen for discussion, it heralds back to Rolling Stone. Because in 2003, they released their first edition of the 500 Greatest Songs and 500 Greatest Albums of All Time. And in that list, you see songs you expected there, your Freebirds, your Bohemian Rhapsodies, A Day in the Life, A Hotel California, Bridge Over Troubled Water. But then I noticed there was one song on this album that crept into the 400 marks. And I was stricken by it because I noticed the profanity and the statement that it had. And I also noticed that the album it was attached to was in the top 200 of the top 500 list. So in my mind, and this being the sort of rising age of the MP3 era in the mid to late 2000s, I was like, okay, so this is a good song from a good album, according to these critics who I like to read. I'll check it out. And I did. So I checked that out, checked out the title track, and then really didn't dive into the album much further than that because I pretty much thought, okay, I like these songs, they are what they are, and then I just put that way in the back of the freezer for future reference. And if I have listened to this album, it was probably during college when I was first getting into Spotify. But that's about it. And I really have never dug into this album proper until this. So I'm sort of fresh on this as well. I knew who N.W.A was. I knew that they had names I recognized, like Ice Cube, like Dr. Dre. But I never really went too much further into this album because, again, it is highly critically acclaimed, highly controversial, and when you mix those two together, it's a good time, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know, because when we reviewed Public Enemy, a few years ago, or a year ago, practically, I'm not sure when we reviewed it, but it was that album was highly critically acclaimed, and it was, I guess, a little controversial, but there was one element within that review. I'm not going to spoil the entire review for any dear listener out there who's somewhat curious, but needless to say, Matthew was much higher on the album than I was. But and I think as a whole, for me as a musical listener, 90s, 80s, this kind of hip hop is always a blind spot for me, which is something that I actually need to actively address, not for the sake of diversity for diversity's sake, but for the fact of one of my favorite rappers of all time, Kendrick Lamar, is from Compton, and he cites city within the album Good Kid, Mad City, and I imagine that he takes some inspiration from prominent artists of the time, most kind of a duh influence there being Tupac. But yeah, that's a journey for another time. The journey that we must take here tonight on Hey Listen to This is we must go straight out of Compton and follow N.W.A. with how they're going to guide us out of Compton. So, for lack of a better segue, Matthew, I think we just got this party started with the opening track here, which is indeed the title track, Straight Outta Compton. Matthew, the floor is yours.
Thank you, good sir. And the question does remain, is there a way to get out of Compton? But for this track, we start in Compton, straight out of Compton. And that intro by Dr. Dre, where he just goes, "You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge." Just perfect opening line to this song, because it just has that ominous presence of you about to learn something. And boy, do we. Because first of all, you get that beat, which for Dr. Dre, we obviously know now how well of a beat maker he is. But here, we're getting the first real taste of it, and he's laid down a very, very solid groove. Like, it's got the funk, it's got the repetition, it's got that oomph. It's got the oomph. And then, if that wasn't enough oomph, here comes Ice Cube. Pretty much, once again, delivering his first appearance on a major record, on a major album. And he is just making his presence known early and often. Just calling himself crazy. And he is just shouting. And he is just bellowing from his soul on that opening verse. He is just absolutely taking the song and putting it in the palm of his hands. And just driving this as fast as he can. As powerfully as he can. The opening lines hit great. And it's just, it's so powerful, man. It's so powerful. He's basically rapping as if his life depends on it. And you could hear it in the way he delivers it. And we'll get to how deep that goes in a later track coming up very soon. Then after that, you get MC Ren, who I would say keeps up the momentum more than anything else. He's not as strong as Ice Cube, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Because MC Ren is rapping like a rapper who knows that he's a rapper, whereas Ice Cube is rapping as if there is no other way to get out of this. And the difference between Ice Cube and Ren is that Ice Cube very much is rapping to showcase how much of a threat he is to the normalized world. And MC Ren is basically there to just brag. He's there to brag about how tough he is against his opponents, how strong he is when it comes to being with the ladies, whether or not he has any affection for them or otherwise. And granted, there is a little bit of misogyny on Ren's verse, but remember, this is gangster rap. This is 1989. This is not a therapy session. These guys are hard asses, and they are not afraid to tell you as such. So, flow-wise, I think MC Ren does a very good job. Again, not as strong as Ice Cube, but that's not really saying a whole lot negative. Ice Cube's just that strong. And then you get Eazy-E with the third verse. And despite having a more high pitch than either Ice Cube or MC Ren or even Dr. Dre for that matter, his intensity is so good. Like, that opening line of, "Is a brother that'll smother your mother and make your sister think I love her." Like, that's just a wonderful flow of a bar. Like, he is just in your face right away. And I think he matches Ice Cube's intensity with everything that's going on. So I think performance-wise, it's just an absolute fantastic time. Again, lyrically, what you get is, again, them going from being guys who will pull out a gun and shoot you at will, take a woman and have their way with her at will. None of this is clean fun. They know it. They're not afraid to show it. And even if you're not necessarily someone who believes in that kind of lifestyle, which I can't necessarily say I am, at the end of the day, this is performance art. And if the performance art tells you, hey, this is who you are, this is what we're going to be on record, they accomplished it. I think Ren accomplishes it, and Eazy and Ice Cube accomplished it so hard that you believe them, which you probably should because that's who they were. All of this to say, this track is fantastic. And for full disclosure, I have a top 3 and a bottom 1 on Straight Outta Compton. This track is in my top 3, and it is in my top 1. It is my favorite track off the whole record.
That's not a bad choice for, your top track off the whole record. And for full disclosure, for me, my gamut runs a top 3 and actually a bottom 1 as well, man. I'm kind of curious. Like, there's a possibility that our bottom track might be the same. Who knows? We'll see. But in terms of my thoughts about Straight Outta Compton, I share a lot of the same thoughts and feelings that you already laid out on the table, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. That spoken word intro by Dre was like the perfect way to introduce the record. Like, you cannot think of a better way to get the listener into the mood of the record. And then how the beat comes in, and that beat, by the way, I agree with you. It is sick. It is nasty, and I just love the details in it. Whether it's the horn swells, the drums, and the guitar, notes, like the little funky notes, chef's kiss off to Dr. Dre. And I don't know if DJ Yella had a hand in that beat as well. I'm assuming Dre had more of a hand in the beats in this record, though. But diving into the performances, though, I feel like we're gonna have maybe some slight disagreement, and when I mean slight, only a minor disagreement. I'll start with the first MC that got on the mic, and that would be Ice Cube. And I agree with you that Ice Cube, his performance was just so good on the track. His verse was so tight, and it's easily the best off the track. No disrespect to MC Ren or Eazy-E, it just, and I will also make note that later on the record, in the solo tracks that MC Ren and Eazy-E both do, they both put on solid performances within those tracks. But when we get to those tracks, we will get to those tracks. But getting into Ice Cube's verse here, it's gonna be hard for me to talk about bars here because there are certain words here that I can't say, but I'll do my best. Bar, the highlights I had within Ice Cube's verse here was Straight Outta Compton was when he was talking about start to mumble, they want to rumble, mix them and cook them in a pot like gumbo. And I immediately thought about South Park and that episode where Cartman cooks the one kid's parents in gumbo or chili and feeds it to the kid. So thank you Ice Cube for making me think of that. And also an interesting thing I found within his verse was the bar that I'm down with the capital CPT. And apparently, because CPT stands for Compton, and apparently this is a form of rhyming called consonants. This is when a rapper uses the same non-vowel letters of a word to substitute out a word. So I thought that was actually kind of clever, and I learned something here diving into this record. So there you go, that's fun. But moving outside of Ice Cube's verse, MC Ren's verse was solid. I agree with you 100%. You get a little less girth in terms of compared to Ice Cube, but it was still pretty solid. And the section I want to highlight within that verse is, I'm a bad motherfucker and you know this, but the won't show this. I don't give a fuck. I'ma make my snaps, if not from the records, from jacking or craps. So essentially the reason why I wanted to highlight this was essentially a jab at MTV at the time, because they want to give N.W.A airplay due to the violent nature of their lyrics. So, and this verse illustrates MC Ren being well, hey, if I'm not gonna make make money from my records, I'm gonna make money from crime. So there you go. Like somebody has to put bread on the table, I suppose. But the slight disagreement that we're gonna have, though, was I wasn't really sold on Eazy-E's performance. His verse here, it's my least favorite off the not record, but like the track. But it did have some fun moments. The one thing I did want to highlight within his verse was, so what about who got shot? Fuck her. You think I give a damn about I ain't a sucker. Like, that line just kind of made me laugh. But, and another, detail within Straight Outta Compton that I did appreciate was the transitions between the verses as it was executed by Dr. Dre. It was executed to a T. You get a personal introduction, getting the listener hyped up, identifying, oh hey, this next verse is going to be done by MC Ren. This next verse is going to be done by Eazy-E. So I thought that was cool and unique. And the way that the whole track ends with Dre saying that shit was dope. That was a fun touch. I did appreciate that as well. So, where does Straight Outta Compton land in my top 3? Because, spoiler alert, this track does land in my top 3 as well. So, after some further reflection and some tinkering up until the point before I gave you a call here to do the episode here this evening, I'm putting Straight Outta Compton as my 3rd favorite track off the whole record.
And no disrespect, because it is a very solid track. I kind of understand what you mean with Eazy-E, but I just thought, even though his lyrics weren't as intense as Ice Cube's, I would say that his intensity and flow was. But again, that's just me. We could agree to disagree on that one. But I think we could both agree with his final line of the track, which is, damn, that shit was dope. Because it is. This track is, in fact, dope. And moving on to the next track, and I'm not going to say it, but Ryan, I will let you take control of this next track on Straight Outta Compton, track 2, and probably the most infamous track that not only is on this album, but maybe we've ever covered.
So, yeah, Fuck the Police. What a track, man. What a track. Wow. The way that this whole track is constructed, where, they have this concept of each member of N.W.A. taking the stand and just spitting bars about their feelings and interactions with the police, and how it was just constructed so good. I can't, messaging aside, because, before we even progress, we can we tend to kind of keep our own thoughts and feelings about things outside of music, outside of this podcast, because, ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is called Hey Listen to This. It's not called Hey Vote for This. So yeah, but objectively with Fuck the Police, love the concept right out of the gate, and also once again the beat is just so dope. At the what I call that, the home base of the song, you get that funky guitar part, complemented by the drums and the bass, and then of course with the chorus, you get more elements of DJ, scratching records and spinning records. So that's a very nice touch. It's a very much a hallmark of late 80s, early 90s hip hop of the time. So great stuff there. And the interlude, again, similar to how in Straight Outta Compton you get different interludes setting the next verse up with the next MC. Here it's kind of expanded upon, and it's very, very, very dope. And the menacing guitar that appears in some parts of the song when members are getting arrested, I thought that was a very, very, very nice touch. So diving into the verses here, I'm gonna start with Ice Cube's verse. Once again, easily the best. Again, no No disrespect to MC Ren and Eazy-E, like, but I will say, like, comparatively between their verses on this track compared to like Straight Outta Compton, they're picking up the slack a little bit. They're up in their game just a little bit. So I mean, there's a lot of bars I can pick out of Ice Cube's verse that are highlights, but you got to go with like the most iconic bar in the whole track. Like, you gotta. And like, for those of you who are like, what I live under a rock, Ryan, what is this iconic bar? Well, let me tell you. The bar goes, a young got it bad because I'm brown and not the other color, so police think they have the authority to kill a minority. Like, again, the way that that comes across is just so good and so like defiant. Moving away from Ice Cube, Ren's verse was solid. I did appreciate what he was delivering to the table there, and it almost seems like a lot of like the discussions within "Fuck the Police," like I think MC Ren and Eazy-E both try to deconstruct the intimidation figure of police in general, because in MC Ren's verse, like the bar I did want to highlight was when he was talking about, but take off the gun so you can see what's up, and we'll go at it, punk, and I'm gonna fuck you up, make you think that I'm gonna kick your ass. So like, I thought that was an excellent bar. And it also kind of, I don't want to say like, takes the power back from the minority perspective of like, against the police that like target like, minorities, but that's a clever bar nonetheless. Moving on to Eazy-E's verse, like I thought it was solid as well, and probably up there with MC Ren. Like I think in this track here, they're pretty much neck for neck in terms of like quality. And the bar I want to highlight within his verse is, they put out my picture with silence because my identity by itself causes violence. And like, again, this is a clever kind of twist on the like the general, like, I don't want to say stigma, but like the general fear of like, some parts of America where they just see a picture of a black man and automatically assume that, oh, you should be scared of this person. Like I very much like that. That's why I highlighted that bar there. And yeah, the ending of the track where they convict the cop of being a quote unquote a redneck white bread chicken shit motherfucker. That was just so great. And like how like, he gets pulled back, like you can hear him being like, fuck you. Oh my goodness. Like, again, iconic tracks are iconic tracks for a reason. So yeah, Fuck the Police is a phenomenal track. And where does Fuck the Police land in my my top tracks? Because, ladies and gentlemen, it does land in my top 3 because I have ears, I have a brain. Not to disrespect this, I don't know if Fuck the Police is in your top 3, but for me, it is easily my favorite track off the whole record.
So, my thoughts on this song. First of all, I do love the intro, like you said. Not just because it has that very sort of almost comedic tone of DOC introducing everybody in the courtroom scene, and then you have Dr. Dre just being as hard as he can, Ice Cube being as hard as he can before it gets to that iconic first verse from Ice Cube. And dude, you nailed it. Like, those opening lines are just so much a punch in the face. It works so well. And again, going back to what I said on Straight Outta Compton, Ice Cube sounds like this is him. And I have very much any reason to believe that he has been through what he's talking about in this song. And even if it's not true, the way he raps makes me believe him. Like, that's just how good of a performance Ice Cube is doing on this. Again, those opening lines are great. The line of thinking every is selling narcotics. and when I'm finished, bring the yellow tape. Just another couple of great lines from him. And then after that, I agree that the interludes in between the verses are very nice, and they are produced very, very well. MC Ren, honestly, once again, I think is there to mostly provide momentum. And his verse isn't bad, but honestly, my vibes getting from him were just basically, yeah, what that guy said, what Ice Cube said, yeah. Which, again, what Ice Cube said is very much amazing, but Ren definitely sort of has that sort of, yeah, me too type of vibe to it. Not that his verse is bad. The lyrical highlights you mentioned about removing the gun and just squaring up, like, that's a great line, period. I also I have a little bit of love-hate with the random gun sound effect, and he goes, yeah, something like that. It didn't take me until today's listen to realize that that's a reference to a song later on in the album, which I thought was kind of impressive. And then Eazy-E, I say once again, not quite up to Ice Cube, but very much in the same ballpark, because he's definitely going with the boastful tone, and he's going with the same vibe of this is who I am, and this is what we deal with, and I'm not cool with it. So yeah, I thought Easy did very well. I think Ren did all right, and I think Ice Cube's verse is just legendary. Like, it's just so good. I am curious because I tried looking it up. I have no idea who plays the quote-unquote cop at the end with the outro, because I'd love to know who had to, take the check to be that voice. The guy just yelling, "That's a lie!" Like, I don't know who that is, because if it's one of the members of the group, that's impressive. If it's somebody else, still impressive, but I would like to know who you are. So yeah, and you're right, the beat is very solid. I do like how it switches from one beat to the other between the chorus and the verses. So yeah, I'm right there with you. This song slaps, and it does have a very strong and potent message that may or may not have some relevance today for reasons that we will not get into. But much like you, I do have this in my top 3 as well, and I have it sitting very closely at number 2.
So 2 songs in, 2 top spots taken in each of our top 3s, man. We're coming out of the gate swinging, man, and rightfully so. Like, this is one hell of a right left kind of combo punch here with the opening start to the record. So yeah, I can very much dig that, and I'm curious to see if we're gonna share the same top 3. We might. Who knows? Like, there's a couple different options, but I'm also more curious to see if we're gonna share the same bottom track. But yeah, maybe one day we'll find out who does the cop voice at the end there. It would be hella funny if it was actually a member of the group, but one day we'll find out. But in the meantime, we got to find out what it means to be Gangsta Gangsta. And oh, hey, look, the next track is indeed called Gangsta Gangsta. And Matthew, I'm gonna let you take this one, man.
I appreciate that. Gangsta Gangsta is the next track, and the beat on this track is pretty solid. I don't think it's quite up to the predecessors, but it's pretty solid stuff from Dre and Yella. And what we get with Gangsta Gangsta, at least for I would say 80, maybe 85, 90% of the track, is more or less an Ice Cube solo track. Because Ice Cube's the only rapper on here until the very end. And at first I thought this track was a step back from the first 2, and in hindsight it still is. But at the same time, like, every listen I kept listening to this song, I kept noticing more and more things that I really liked. First of all, there's a moment early on where Ice Cube shouts out Dr. Dre and says, Dre will hit him with the left, right, left, right, left, right. I thought that moment was spectacular, and I'm surprised I didn't catch it sooner. I was like, whoa, that is a really good moment. And then you get to the verses themselves, which very much have a just sort of, how do I describe this? For those of you who have never listened to the song It Was a Good Day by Ice Cube, which is probably his most famous pop hit from the early 90s, imagine what goes on in that track and reverse it, because that's what this track is. Like, it's not a good day. He's got people all up in his business. He's ready to step on somebody, but he's got the confidence to let you know that he is going to deal with it the best that he can. Whether it's, dealing with women he doesn't like, or dudes he doesn't like, or police he doesn't like, or people just calling him a gangsta gangsta because, he's a man that's built to last, and if you can't handle it, tough stuff. So I did like a lot of this track, and then towards the end, when it does that little flip twist where you get the producer saying, we're going to take it back, we're going to take it all the way back, and then you get the portion with both Ice Cube and Eazy-E. I thought that was a really nice touch too, where you get Eazy throwing a couple funny bars of, he's out throwing dice and he's all crapped out. Like, that's just a great line. Like, that's just an absolutely baller line. And then you get him talking to the women, where he's like, I want to love you too. That's not what he actually says, but I'm cleaning myself up here. So yeah, this was tough because realistically, the first two tracks that we talked about are miles and miles and miles away the best two tracks on the album, not even close. So finding a third was a little tough, but I think after my third listen for this review, I think I found it, and it is this track. So, 1, 2, 3 punch. Gangsta Gangsta completes the top 3.
Oh man, coming out left field with a blind southpaw uppercut. And if I'm getting that wrong, don't discriminate. I'm not much. I've never watched a boxing match in my life. It's just not one of my things. But yeah, I can very much dig that wholeheartedly. So a lot of the things that you talked about within your dissection, I agree with pound for pound. Right out of the gate when you were talking about the section where Ice Cube goes right left, and you get the production matching that feel of somebody punching right, giving a right and a left, that was really clever. I really did like that. And yeah, just with this track here mainly featuring Ice Cube, a couple of the bars that I did appreciate, because I'm going to start with the bars and I'm going to go into the production. There was just in verse 1 there was a very funny line where Ice Cube's talking about, to a kid looking up to me, life ain't nothing but bitches and money. And I'm like, okay, that's funny. That's funny, man. And then in verse 2, when he's talking about, again, I'm gonna have to censor myself here. And then you look, all you see is running and falling and yelling and pushing and screaming and cussing. The way that he sounds there, it's so smooth. It comes across so nice to the ear. So again, very, very, it's a tremendous flow. And then in verse 3, the section where he's talking about him and his friends were out driving around, and apparently he has something for girls in biker shorts, because this is not the first track that he mentions it in the album, which I think is interesting. I thought that was a fun section there. And then the fourth verse was fine. You highlighted the section there where Easy was you highlighted a bar within that section there. But I thought that verse was overall fine. But getting into the production elements of it, I felt like the intro to the song was solid and kind of funny with the the spoken word bit where you hear sirens and gunshots in the background, and you hear someone being I wonder who they effed up today, and then that said person gets shot. So like I thought that was funny and kind of clever. And the overall beat is just so funky. The guitar part is just so good and hypnotic. And like the drums and the bass complement the beat so well to complete like a pretty good song like overall. And only other note I have about Gangsta Gangsta is like the flow from the pre-chorus to the chorus was solid. And like I did appreciate the chorus as well. It was very much like I don't want to say prototypical like of its time hip hop chorus, but it's pretty much of its time of a hip hop chorus. But it's still good nonetheless. But unlike you, I did not have Gangsta Gangsta in my top 3, but I did put Gangsta Gangsta in the good song bucket. Like, there was enough memorable moments for me to, like, really appreciate what was going on here. But not so much that I was, like, honestly kind of putting this into a top track kind of contention territory. But it's still a fun track nonetheless.
It is a fun track. And again, I would say there were probably 3, 4, maybe 5 tracks that were kind of competing for that number 3 spot. If I'm being completely honest, because again, 1 and 2... far and away 1 and 2, like leaving the field far behind. But I'm glad you mentioned that part where Ice Cube's flow is just so on point, where he just da 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 da, like it's so smooth. Like I think that and the part with Dr. Dre with the right left right left right, that's what won it for me. Like that's what pushed this just above everything else to land in my top 3. But I am curious now as to what your third favorite track on this album is going to be. Well, actually, I know what that track is, so we've already discussed that. But the other track in your top 3, we'll find out what that is. And we'll see if it's coming up right now, because the next track off of Straight Outta Compton is If It Ain't Ruff. And Ryan, the floor is yours.
With It Ain't Ruff here, we get MC Ren with a chance to shine here and take a solo lap here with the track. And yeah, dude, he has skills, and like I very much appreciate what he's bringing to the table. It's straight up fire, in my opinion. Like I'm gonna go into the production first. The beat is just so bloody good. Like I love it so much. It's just so funky, and it is only complemented by what I described as record scratch flares, in that like it's not like traditional like record scratching complementing the beat. Like you get sections where you get the guitar part, and then like you get like just a little like almost like a singer at the end of a section there. So like I very much appreciate the beat that was happening here. The chorus here is just so simple, but yeah, like it's very, very. It works very well. It just works fairly well. But like overall though, like I think my main like appreciation about the track comes from MC Ren as a whole. Like he just shines so well. Like his flow here is just so tight. And I think this is probably his best performance off the whole record. I could be mistaken. I mean, I want to like correct myself as the review carries on, but like again, the way that he's able to like just really just flow within the track is just like pretty astonishing. But yeah, breaking down some verses here. Verse 1, the highlight that I had was, "You're screaming with fear, but it's with fear that you're screaming. You're waking up in a sweat because Ren is given some bad dreams." This is basically Ren being like, "Hey, like I'm giving you nightmares," like And then in verse 2, I like not really any explanation behind it, but I did enjoy like the penmanship here, which was, "I'm making a point, but it's a point that I'm making." Like I did dig that. And then in verse 3, like the way that the production cuts out here was a highlight for me. It's a part where he's talking about the do not disturb sign is in effect. Like again, clever use of production cutting out there. Like I'm always a fan of like songs that execute stuff like that as a whole. But yeah, overall though, with It Ain't Ruff, I know I kind of glowed about MC Ren's flow here, and it might allude to the fact that this might be my, like, the other top song in my top three. It is not, though. It Ain't Ruff. It was up for contention for a top spot off the whole record, so it's going into like the great song bucket slash cut track territory. So yeah, I did dig the song quite a bit though. So how about you, Matthew?
My thoughts on If It Ain't Rough are pretty much right in alignment with yours. I was, again, very surprised that they gave MC Ren a solo spot, and he delivers so well. Like, first of all, Dr. Dre's beat and Yella's beat, I'm going to assume, for the most part, kind of like you, that if there is a good funky beat on this track, unless otherwise stated, it is belonging to Dr. Dre because, again, hindsight tells us that he had the career. But for the sake of this track, Dr. Dre just very much providing a beat, and MC Ren's flow is so good. And lyrically speaking, they pretty much are what they say they are, and it's kind of funny how you mentioned that Ren is talking about being this nightmare or being this sort of, almost cartoon villain, because, again, this is not going to be the last time we get a situation where he shows himself in that context. So here you establish that theme of him being just sort of this menacing figure one way or another. Now, granted, that being said, the lyrics do seem a little tame compared to what we've already had. But again, considering what we've already had, that's not really saying a whole lot. I mean, we had a song that got a letter of warning from the FBI, so there's only so many times you could poke that bear before the bear has been officially considered poked, and this is not a bear poking song. But what it is a very strong, very solid performance by MC Ren. His flow is very strong, and I'm very glad that this track exists. And much like you, I would put it in cut territory. Like, this is one of the tracks I would say very, very easily could have been in contention for that third spot.
I'm glad that we are kind of almost on the same page with It Ain't Ruff. I feel like I'm a little bit higher on MC Ren's performance as a whole, but ultimately, at the end of the day, we kind of put the track in the same kind of territory. So it is what it is. It's not our bottom track. It's not our top track. So we must progress into the next track, though, because we've sufficiently covered It Ain't Ruff, and the next track is coming with a an advisory, and that track is indeed Parental Discretion is advised. And I'm going to take this one here, kicking things off. So, with Parental Discretion is advised, this is a very fun posse cut, and you get 5 different MCs taking one bar after another. And if I remember correctly, it's basically one verse into the other, into the other, into the other. So it creates a very organic flow within the track. So that's it makes for a very fun time. And before we started to the bars though, that beat once again is just sick nasty. I love the bass. I love the piano. Having the bass and the piano having some interplay within the beat. And the drums underneath just create, it's just such a sick ass beat. Very much again, chef's kiss off to Dr. Dre here. And I also very much enjoy how Tracy, the DOC Curry, does the intro and ends it with, how he ends the intro with, "Oh, okay, you want me to do the intro? All right." And then he goes into kind of an intro verse. I thought that was clever, very fun. And DOC's verse was fine as an intro verse, but it's mainly used as a way to get the listener into the groove of the track as a whole. After that, you get Dre's verse. Dr. Dre come to the table, and he had a solid verse. It was the performance was very good, and like the section I highlighted within that verse was because I don't give a fuck about radio play. Observe the English I display. Lyrics for adults. Children have been barred and scarred from listening to something mother clucking hard, and not mother clucking, but like, again, you can, use the appropriate, like, curse word there. But like, again, this is also given, like, more water to more meat to the bone about like how N.W.A wasn't given like radio play because of like their violent nature of the lyrics. So again, I very much appreciated that. MC Ren's verse I felt like was a little bit better than Dr. Dre's, and like actually in hindsight, I think his verse was the best off of the whole track here. Like Ice Cube's verse was good, and Eazy-E's verse was okay, but it was really taken back by MC Ren. And I don't know if this was due to the fact of just coming off of his performance with It Ain't Ruff, and I'm like, oh, hey, look, this guy's back in town. But, yeah, the section that I did highlight within Ren's verse was when he was talking about some shit, I don't take it, not even in a toilet, and shit from a sucker's put in a pot and I'll boil it. Turn up the pilot as it burns, and maybe the MFers will learn. Like the whole some shit I don't take, not even a toilet bar. Like that was enough there to sell me on that bar there. Outside of that though, I don't have any highlights from Ice Cube or Eazy. Like again, nothing bad within those bars. Like it's just there wasn't anything that really stood out to me. So with parental discretion is advised. Again, I feel like this is one of the bigger songs off the record, but overall though, the beat's fantastic. You get some good performances, but nothing really that electrifies me as a whole outside of the shit in toilet discussion here. But yeah, I'm putting parental discretion is advised into the good song bucket.
And for me, I did find it interesting that this track started with DOC and Dr. Dre, like you mentioned, leading the charge vocally. And while I thought DOC was good, to me, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit here. I thought Dr. Dre's verse was the best on this track by far. Because this is his first real opportunity to show what an MC he is, and he does a really, really, really good job. I mean, the verse you mentioned about how they're not getting enough radio airplay and that they could just take their music wherever and succeed however they want, that's huge. That was a huge verse. And not only that, but he is flowing on top of what you said is a great, great beat from Yella. After that, I thought Ren's verse was good. I didn't take anything away from it, though, that I thought was necessarily spectacular or had any type of major impact. So, yeah, I thought his verse was all right. And I did like that line that you mentioned there about the toilet. That one was pretty good. Ice Cube I thought was solid, too, but I didn't think his verse was spectacular. Honestly, though, this track was in contention for top 3 territory, if not for... because, like you said, the way that it all just flows into one another was nice. But I'm sorry, Eazy-E's verse is easily the weakest of the group, and probably the weakest I've heard on the album so far. Because, to me, he's less focused on any type of flow to the beat and just shouting out bars. And honestly, I've heard better bars. He's basically just talking about how this woman can, properly seduce him, let's call it that. And not really in a way that's clever or anything other than just, hey, I'm here too. And I thought that was kind of weak. Not to the point where it's my bottom track by any means. This track is still very solid. I'd probably put it in the good song bucket. And one other note about this track before I kick it back to you, Ryan. The outro, I thought they... at first, I thought they let that repeat of Easy going a little too long. But the way it paid off at the very, very end was funny. Like, that was just a funny payoff, and I appreciated what was going on there.
Yeah, I feel like with Parental Discretion is advised, we've covered that track pretty well, pretty efficiently. So I think it might be just like, the right thing to do in terms of like, just progressing on into the next track. And that track is indeed 8 Ball, but it's not the original 8 Ball. This is indeed a remix.
Yes, 8 Ball is the next track. It is the remix of 8 Ball. And immediately I was caught off guard with this track because I heard the voice of Flavor Flav, and I'm just like, hold on. That's from a different group. That's from Public Enemy. And they've only been recording since 1987. So how did that pass through to get on this record? So that was a very weird start. But then you get after a couple of sort of fake false starts where it just sort of fades out and then back in, you get the meat of the track, which from Dr. Dre is a pretty solid beat. And from Eazy-E, where this time it's more him as a solo track, you get a pretty solid flow. Even though he more or less favors bars like he did at the end of Parental Discretion is Advised. But what E doesn't have in flow, he makes up for in not just vocal intensity, but a sense of humor. And the first couple times I listened to this track, I was kind of like, man, I don't know about this one. But once I learned to stop taking it seriously, I appreciated it for what it was. Which is to say that this is pretty much a joke track intended for comedy. And what you have is Easy playing this sort of washed out, wife beater wearing, 40 chugging, just dude on the street. Like, he is playing this role to a T, where he's bragging about all the nothing he's going to do today and all the booze he's going to drink. Like, he's very much playing a character that is not meant to be seen as a force of intimidation, like we got on Straight Outta Compton, like we got on Gangsta Gangsta, and the track in between. Like, this is supposed to be a song about a loser. And Eazy-E is playing a loser very, very well. And it's funny. Like, it's just a funny track the more you listen to it. The fact that he's talking about drinking a 40 and his balls are freezing, like, that's just good stuff, man. Like, that's just a funny, funny track. And, like, Dre's performance on the beat is solid. Again, it tends to throw out every single type of sound effect and little weird part that it can in there. And it just kind of goes all over the place to the point where you're just like, where did that come from? What is he thinking? What is he doing? But somehow it all just kind of works on the remix here. It is not a top track for me. In fact, I'd probably say this is, I would say much like Parental Discretion is Advised, I'd put it in the good song bucket. But at the same time, like, it took a little bit to get there. But it's a fun track for what it is. Again, it's a bit of a goof track, and it works well as a goof.
Okay, and my thoughts about 8 Ball, like, I kind of share a lot of the same thoughts as you, but yeah, I think I'm a little bit higher on the track, but yeah, let me explain. So with like kind of like how you alluded to, here Eazy-E is given a chance to shine, and like my thoughts and feelings about the track is he rules on this track, and not even going into like the verses and his performance so far, like, like going into the beat, like that beat goes hard in the paint, like the way that the drums are produced, it's so prominently and like it works so well alongside that distorted guitar, and like you also get like a fun bell noise, like, I felt like that was just an overall like a great combination of elements there. So again, so good. Easy's flow is just very tight here, and the song overall fits him very well. And breaking down like a couple of bars here that I really did appreciate. In verse one, the section where he's talking about that Marvin Gaye tape, I love how you can hear the sound effect of Marvin Gaye in the background. Like again, it's those little moments that I do appreciate. In verse two, where he's detailing about like going to a store because he needed more to drink, and like the clerk refused to give him service, and he essentially fired at the clerk. So yeah, I felt like that was a fun story. And then in verse three, when he shows up to a party, and yeah, he's already drunk, and yeah, you just get like like moments in that verse where he's talking about stepped on your foot, coldest yo ho, and then asked her to dance, and she said hell no. And like it's funny, like you can picture like a drunk man going to a party, stepping on someone's foot, and then calling her like a derogatory name, and then asking her to dance. Like how drunk are you, dude? At the end of the day. And in verse four, like the only highlight that I had there was like the roll call at the end of the track. I felt like that was very, very, like that was a lot of fun, and the interludes between the verses was like I did appreciate what was going on there. Yeah, overall though, like with 8 Ball, like I very much appreciate what this track is bringing to the table, and I'm very glad that we got each like like Ice Cube has very much like his performances in the first 2 tracks were an instant highlight for the both of us, and then like you get MC Ren and Eazy getting like the opportunity to shine. So like I'm feeling very good about the record so far, but 8 Ball is not in my top 3. I would put it in the cut track kind of territory, like a contention spot for a top 3. But still, it's a great track nonetheless. Obviously.
Yeah, I would say your assessment is correct. It is a little bit higher for you than it is me. Although I do like the fact you brought up the Marvin Gaye line, because that one did get me too. Because I can just imagine someone like Eazy-E, Mr. Straight Outta Compton, and the Police, listening to songs like I'll Be Doggone and How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You. Like, that's just funny. Like, that's just really, really funny. And the fact they interpolated that into the song is also a nice touch. But yeah, to me, this is more. This isn't quite as bad as like. I wouldn't consider this like an album track, but it's getting close to that. But for what it is, again, it's a very, very fun, goofy type of song. So, if you're ready, Ryan, I am ready to move on to the next track, which is something like that, I guess.
Yeah, indeed, something like that. So yeah, I dug the song. We've had individual tracks where each MC gets an opportunity to shine, and we get some posse cuts within the first side of the record here. But with something like that, it's basically a collab track with Dr. Dre and MC Ren. So yeah, and the way that it was executed was pretty great. The beat itself was great. Always, I have a soft spot for horns. Like the way that the horns add stingers to the beat here is just absolutely fantastic. The performances overall were really solid. The verses individually were solid, and when they came together in terms of the shared verse, I think it was in verse 3, I could be mistaken, was good. Nothing mind blowing, but it came across pretty well, pretty enjoyable. MC Ren's verse, I did have the section I did want to highlight there was when he's talking about digging a grave of a looking up to me that really had the nerve to think that he could fuck with me. And it's a clever twist on the phrase of hey, somebody's looking up to me, but but this person once thought that they could mess with me. So like again, self-empowerment verse, very fun, very clever. In Dre's verse, the section I do want to highlight was never say I'm the best and just going for mine. Unlike a lot of suckers who claim they get busy when the records only make good frisbees. And like, that's a clever, like, diss on like the quality of like, the musicianship of those quote unquote suckers out there. And then yeah, I also did dig how each MC got their verse, and the way that they ended their verse was by saying, "Why don't you tell them what your name is?" Like again, clever lyric writing that kind of led into the next MC's verse. But yeah, overall though, with something like that, it's a good song. I very much enjoy it. It's going in the good song bucket for me.
For me, it's pretty much the same. I would say that, first of all, the fact that you did have MC Ren and Dr. Dre working together on this track, at first I thought this kind of sounded like a throwaway track, like sort of another goof track, like 8 Ball, where they're just having fun, but instead of being, portraying this loser, they're just two MCs doing what they're doing. And the first thought I had was to something like many years down the line, you would get songs like Crazy Rap and Because I Got High from Afro Man. Just sort of that sort of weird improvised sort of, hey, let's get in the studio and cut a track type of vibe. But in reality, in hindsight, they're just doing the Run DMC thing, which is basically rapping for the sake of rapping, boasting for the sake of boasting, and working together to make the dopest track possible. And for the most part, they succeed. Because it is old school hip hop. I said it's boilerplate. It kind of is, because I didn't think a whole lot of the lyrics stood out. The ones that I thought did were the ones you already mentioned, with the Frisbee line just being one of the best ones on this whole album. Just super, super clever. And then the way that you talked about how they sort of did the duet on the intro, then it was Ren, then it was Dre, or vice versa, and then they came together on that final verse. That was a really interesting twist, because even singing together is not easy. So trying to rap together when you're trying to match flows, that's pretty tough. So on a technical level, that's very impressive. The beat's solid. I liked it. I did kind of found it very interesting at the end. They just threw in a random Steve Miller Band sample for no reason. The woo woo from Take the Money and Run. I was just like, oh, they just decided to throw that in there for, shits and giggles. Much appreciated. But yeah, to me, this is also a good track. Probably on a day, I would probably put it in cut track territory, just because on a technical basis, it's so solid. But again, lyrically, there wasn't as much to stand out for me that really just caught my eye or my ear. So something like that, good song bucket.
Fair enough, man. And I feel like I actually feel like you're higher on the track than me, but we did indeed talk about something like that very efficiently, and therefore we have crossed the threshold into side B of the record. But before we expressed ourselves, with the next song being indeed Express Yourself, if the before I even go any further, Matthew, I have a question for you.
For me? Okay, all right. This feels like familiar territory, so I'll go ahead and ask what that question is.
If the dear listener out there wants to indeed express themselves in that they are really just appreciating what we're delivering here on this episode here of Hey Listen to This, and they want to help support what we do on a weekend and week out basis, what are some ways that they can help show some support? And if they want to just get a little closer to us at the end of the day, what are some ways in other mediums that they can help connect with us?
Well, the ways they can connect with us and support what we're doing here on Hey Listen to This. First of all, they can continue to listen to this here on Hey Listen to This by listening to us on their favorite podcasting platform of choice. We are on Apple Podcasts. We are on Pocket Cast. We are on Spotify. So if you're looking for us on any of those or anywhere else that you can find podcasts, that is how you can find us. You can just find our logo and our list of episodes, 100 plus strong. Also, we upload our episodes to YouTube every week. So if you prefer going to YouTube for your podcast, that is where you can find us. And if you like what you're listening to, if you're on a audio only platform, do whatever it takes to please the algorithmic gods. Give us that 5-star rating, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, give us that like, leave a comment, subscribe to our channel. We appreciate that very much. And if you're listening and you like what you hear and you want to share it with somebody, but you're not quite sure who that somebody is, you might think there might be multiple somebodies that could appreciate this, and you don't want to send out 9 or 10 individual messages, do not worry. We are on social media as well. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. We are on Threads. We are on Blue Sky. And if you're looking for us on any of those platforms, you can either type in our name, which is Hey Listen to This, or you can use the username TT Hey Listen. Again, that is TT, the letters, not the drink, Hey Listen, and find us on any of those platforms. And speaking of TT Hey Listen, if you want to reach out to us directly, but you do not know us directly, we have an email address that you can reach us out to at. That is ttheylisten@gmail.com. Again, that is ttheylisten@gmail.com. And that is where you can leave us some feedback, positive, negative, or suggestive, as in suggesting a future album that we can cover here on Hey Listen to This, because we have done listener requests in the past, and we would not mind doing that again. So again, ttheylisten@gmail.com is where you can reach out to us directly. Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram is where you can spread the word indirectly, and follow us on the likes of Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and Pocket Cast for weekly episodes. And to any of you and all of you who have done that so far, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, we're just two dudes who love to talk about music. We're not sponsored by any major religious organization. We're not sponsored by any type of fresh banana subscription. We're just two dudes who like to talk about music. We're not sponsored by anybody, at least not yet. And Ryan, as always, I thank you for being a great co-host and good friend to talk about music each and every week. It has been a fun ride, and one that has brought us to our second Black History Month.
And the compliment goes right back at you, man. I always enjoyed diving into records, whether it's something as classic as this, or something as eclectic as what we're what we will talk about next week on our Hey Listen to the show. And also, dear corporations out there, if you are indeed a religious organization that is somewhat surrounded around the concept of fresh bananas, please, email us. I want to know if you guys exist. That thought kind of creeped into my brain. But anyways, enough expressing my desire in terms of finding out if there's a religion out there around yellow fruit. Matthew, it is time that we dive into the back half of this record here, which is Straight Outta Compton by N.W.A. And the first track that we are going to be talking off of side B is indeed Express Yourself. So, Matthew, express your feelings about Express Yourself.
I will do my best to express my feelings about Express Yourself. This track, if you thought the last track was old school hip-hop, this track is even older school hip-hop. Because this is very much as origins of hip-hop as it gets. Because now you're just taking a song, adding a second beat on top of it, and calling that a beat. Which, that's basically how Sugar Hill Gang did it with Rapper's Delight. That's how Grandmaster Flash did it with The Message, or DJ on the Wheels of Steel. Stuff like that. So this is as very A and B as you can get with a rap sample. And it samples the song of the same name, Express Yourself, by Charles Wright and the 103rd Street Rhythm Band. And the sample itself is solid. I wasn't super knocked out by it. Like, it sounds fine. It sounds good. But again, with everything that they've done so far, particularly with beats on Straight Outta Compton or even the previous track with something like that, the beats have been innovative and original in and of themselves as far as you can go with sampling. So here it just feels like the beat itself is so old school that it feels like a slight step back, but not so far a step back that it's like, oh, this is bad. No, it's just very, very, very primitive by comparison. But that being said, the beat does do a lot of heavy lifting on this track because Dre is a good vocalist and he does a really good job here. He's choosing flow over bars, kind of like MC Ren did earlier with It Ain't Ruff. And for the most part, it more or less works because Dre is once again showing that he is a very good rapper. And he is just showing that he too can do this. So this is more or less a solo job by him for the most part. But honestly, I don't think his lyrics and intensity are quite as peak as someone like Ren or Cube. And I thought the beat, again, was good but primitive. This is not my least favorite track on the album by far. Like, this is a solid track. But ultimately, I'd probably say this is, like, right on the cusp of being in the good song bucket. Like, I'll put it in the good song bucket, but it's close. Like, this is close to album track territory. I thought this track was just alright.
And for me here, I'm going to have a different opinion here. I'm going to express yourself. I'm going to express myself in a different way.
I had a feeling.
Oh, man. I'm glad that, like, you know, I guess I could be a little bit predictable. But, like, yeah. For me, this song was a lot of fun. Like, the sample was fantastic, and the way that the beat is surrounding it is just so good. Like, it was an instant highlight for me. And honestly, yeah, well, I'll talk about like that, what I was about to talk about later on. But yeah, just the way, like, one of the things that made me gravitate to this track is the way that the song seamlessly moves from section to section by playing off the sample. And like, what I mean by that is, like, you know, at the end of the intro, you get the bar, so what you want me to do, and the next thing you hear is express yourself. And like, just a couple other examples is, like, at the end of verse 1, you get, but making a sucker and you equal, don't be another sequel, express yourself. End of verse 2, as long as you make a note to express yourself. Verse 3, but I won't strike if you just express yourself. Like, the way that, like, that just rolled into, like, each section, like, I very much appreciate that. It was like a nice dopamine hit for my brain. But outside of, like, you know, the clever lyric writing playing off the sample itself, like, I think I'm a little bit higher on Dre's lyrics within the song than you, and that's fair. His flow was solid and it works well within the song, but a couple of highlights within the song though. Verse 1, when he's talking about dropping some drop science, well, he's dropping English, even if Yella makes it a cappella. And, like, you know, that's basically alluding to the fact, like, he can deliver bars even if he doesn't have a beat. And then in verse 2, when he's kind of, like, talking about, like, you know, oh, some people are, like, you know, scared to use profanity when they're up on the microphone, but let's be real, when they're at home, like, they're using profanity, so they rather exaggerate a little fiction. Like, that was clever. And also, like, this bar has stuck with me for, like, a long time. In verse 3, when he's talking about, you ain't swift, moving like a tortoise full of rigor mortis. And the way that he rhymes tortoise with rigor mortis, like, oh my god, dude. like my hat's off to you, Mr. Dre. And that hat is off so much. I already kind of alluded to this. Like, this song does complete my top three. Express Yourself worked its way into my top three by taking the second spot in that category. It actually beat out Straight Outta Compton, and like I have to be true to myself. I enjoy this song a little bit more than Straight Outta Compton.
And that's completely fair because this is one of those tracks where I feel like I may have to go back and re-listen to it because it's weird. Like, when I listened to it, I was like, okay, I like this song, it's fine, but I could possibly see this sneaking into Ryan's top three just because it has not just a nice technical flow, but it has that wordplay, it has that nice beat. Again, it didn't do as much for me as Gangsta Gangsta, but I'd say this isn't necessarily close to being an album track. I'd say this firmly goes in the good song bucket, so I'll sort of change that a little bit. But yeah, ultimately not quite top one for me, but this track is pretty chill, so I appreciate it for what it was, and I'm glad you appreciated it as much as you did. So that being said, I am ready, Ryan, if you are, to move on to the next track, which is Compton's In the House.
The remix edition. So, with here, we got a track that I feel like is mostly okay, and this is the first track in the record as a whole that I felt like is like a middle of the road track, and like it's not a bad track by any means, but it's very much like you illustrated like the song Something Like That was like boilerplate. Like, I feel like this is even more boilerplate-y. But I'm gonna go into the nuts and bolts of it as much as I can. Like I've been doing for a lot of the tracks on the record here so far. Talk about the beat. The beat is pretty basic. Like, it's not bad, but it's nothing that is noteworthy. And for the production that we've gotten so far off the record, and how like Dre has been like, a master chef at concocting like, masterful beats, like it just seems like they may have just turned down the temperature a little bit here, and like, just wanted to cut a track at the end of the day, and I think that was the intention. But the sample in this track comes from a 1987 track by Dezo Daz, and the track is It's My Turn. So, fun fact out there for you liner head notes and wanted to dig into different kind of tracks. But yeah, like overall though, like this song is structured as another posse cut, and the performances are decent. You do get some fun moments. Like in verse 1, the section where they kind of buffer on the phrase "to the people, the people, the people, the people, people," like that was clever. And also the section where it comes across, where from everywhere watching the show, the way that this comes across with the beat cutting out is pretty nice. And another section that comes across pretty nice is step up, run up, get up, what's up, suckers. Like, that was a fun moment. And then in verse 5, you get a section where there's the bar is, they got a wacky whack record with a wacky whack crew. What's about what's about the lyrics? That shit's wacky whack too. Like, like that, like the repetition of the wacky whack was fun for me. But yeah, overall though, with Compton's In the House, like, I don't have a lot else to say about the track. It's fine. But again, I'm putting in the mid-song bucket for me, dude.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on this one. I did like the repetition of the people, the people, the people, the people. That I thought was clever too. And basically what I realized very quickly is that the formula for this track is basically a stripped-down version of Something Like That. Because once again, you have MC Ren and Dr. Dre basically just trading bars and trading verses and doing their, hey, here I am and so are you, and let's go back and forth until this track is done. You are spot on about the beat or lack thereof, because it is about as textbook, plain paper, no toppings type of beat that you can get. Like, there's no horns, there's no flavor, it is just a beat. And because of that, I almost honestly, up until the final listen, had this as a bottom track. Like, that kind of felt like such a step back for me that I thought this track was so nothing burger. But on the final listen, I was like, okay, it's true, but it's not that bad because Dre and Ren do just enough to make this a passable song. Because again, it's even though it's boilerplate, and you were right, it's much more boilerplate than something like that. It's not bad. Like they sound good. They sound like they're trying to have that braggadocio that works so well on most of the other tracks. They're talking about somebody. I don't know who they're talking about, but they are coming after somebody in the wickety whack verse, and they are making it known that, hey, we think you suck. So that was effective in its own right. So yeah, this track is very much an album track for me. Not bad enough to get a bottom spot, but very, very much a track that exists.
I think it's interesting. I feel like for the most part, we've kind of come like across with a lot of the tracks here. Like again, like our top three wasn't 100% in line, but yeah, like I just thought with Compton's in the House, with me feeling like it's a mid track and potentially a bottom track, and you feel kind of like the same way. I feel like so far in the record here, we've kind of shared like the same kind of thoughts and feelings about the record, but our temperature on different tracks has risen or fallen accordingly. But I just thought that was kind of a clever note, man.
It is a clever note, and again, it's not that this track is bad. And again, we have our opinions. We're grown men. We can say what we want and think what we want. But you're right. We for the most part have aligned a decent bit on the things we've talked about so far.
So that being said, Matthew, I ain't the one who's gonna hold us back from talking about the next track. And oh, look at that! The dad puns are still there. The next track is indeed I Ain't the One. And Matthew, why don't you talk about how you are not the one to get played like a poo butt?
So this track is a bit of a solo job by Ice Cube. Remember Ice Cube? He was on this album at one point. He's back. And this track, I mean, fun fact, I'll just get right into it. That poo butt line I didn't even recognize until today. Like that's just like you know what? I'm not even gonna like try to be like super, you know, uh, you know, thought worthy or intuitive or introspective. I'm just gonna say this track sucks ass, man. Like, let's just cut right to it. First of all, what Ice Cube had on the likes of the first two tracks on this album being such legendary performances, and even Gangsta Gangsta was really, really solid. And we haven't heard from him since Parental Discretion of the Vibe, so you almost forgot about him. But he's back, and he has just traded all and any flow he has for bars. And let's be real, the beat and the women on this track have better flow than he does. Like, this is so... Like, this isn't even boilerplate. This is water. Like, this is boiled water. Like, this is just plodding along at the most lackluster tempo. And most of the bars that he's going for, because this is a song about how, you know, all these money chasing women are going after him, and all they want is his money. But you know, when it comes to romance, they don't want to give him anything. They just want his money. And again, as I mentioned in Straight Outta Compton, these are not necessarily your youth pastors. These are gangster types who don't care about the law. They don't care about women. They don't care about anything but themselves, such as it is. But that doesn't mean you have the excuse to cut a whack-ass track like this. Because, again, it just... the way he doesn't flow. Like, it's just right there. He does not flow. He sounds like so lethargic, and he's just trying to say these jokes, which aren't even really jokes. Although, I will give him credit. The line about going to Burger King instead of getting lobster is still funny. That one is very good. But it's not enough to save this song from not only a bad performance by Ice Cube, but just a lousy beat from Dre and/or Yella. Like, it's a very slow plotting beat. It sounds very corny and jokey, like it's a Saturday morning cartoon with Ice Cube and his hoes. Like, no, we don't need that. And also, it just feels like there's a part of it like that's like purposefully out of tune. Like, that sounds like crap. Like, there is really just not a whole lot that's enjoyable about this track at all. But that being said, no, I'm just kidding. This is easily my least favorite track off the whole record by a country mile. Ugh.
Oh man, well this is gonna be a little awkward. So I'm just gonna come out right out of the gate and say it. We don't share the same bottom track here. Okay. So I'll start by saying that. But yeah, I actually enjoyed this track a lot more than you apparently. So much so that it did end up in the good song bucket. I'll start by saying that. I felt like this track was a lot of fun. Like, I'm gonna start with the beat, like as I've done throughout this whole review here. I felt like the beat was sick. Like, the piano is doing an excellent job leading the beat, and the drums and the vocal samples and the little like tiny rattle, like they all do an excellent job creating a fun beat, and like the strings adding in little parts like within the track, like the beat was like they that was really good. And unlike you, I felt like the performance was from Ice Cube was pretty legit. Like, it was hilarious. And ironically enough, like the two bars that I did highlight as like like noteworthy moments was like the poo butt line that we've talked about, and like the line that and after the date I'm thinking I want to do the wild thing. You want lobster? Huh? I'm thinking Burger King. Like, that was hilarious. And like the whole like I ain't the one to get played like a poo butt. Like, that's just a funny ass line. And like other bars within the track here, just like the bar reads, but you see, I don't go nuts over girls like you with the big old butts. Like, again, when that bar came across, I was just like, that's hilarious, man. Like, the way that everything just comes across so corny. Like, I was here for the corn, man. Yeah, and it's okay if you weren't here for the corn. Like, not everyone likes to have their stuff on the cob. But for me, the humor on the cob was enough for me to put this in a good song bucket. Like, I don't have any other notes other than that. I mean, like, it was just a fun thing. Well, actually, I think I do have another note, and that note was about like how you get that spoken interludes with the girls talking. Like, that was an excellent touch, and it added excellent context to the song. But yeah, apparently we don't share the same bottom track, and that's okay, man.
We don't, and that is okay, because again, I think what really sunk this track for me wasn't necessarily the sense of humor, because a song for comparison I thought of immediately when it talks about guys talking about how women are and what they do, from an album we reviewed here on the show, which is She Watched Channel Zero from Public Enemies. It takes a nation of millions to hold us back. Like, that one is also a little bit of a sort of misogynist fantasy of, you know, these guys calling out a woman for watching soap operas when they want to watch the big game, and it's just sort of ridiculous that, how dare this woman be her and not let me be me, and boo. Like, I get that there's an audience for that, and that's fine. And if this track was just a little bit better produced, I probably would have forgiven it, but again, I just think Ice Cube's delivery is so limp. I think the beat is just a little too cheeky and corny, and it's hard to, and again, this is just me, it's hard for me to really accept that for what it is when we've already gotten some revolutionary stuff earlier on in this very same album by these very same artists. But again, that is just my opinion. I respect yours for being what it is.
So, that being said, I feel like we are ready to get into the last leg of the record here. And the first track that's going to kick that off is indeed Dopeman. Not the original, the remix. But yeah, I felt like with Dopeman here, like this song was fun. The beat gets a little bit more traditional with the drums doing the legwork to make the beat have its like worth as a whole. And you do get some record scratches that do some work to like make the beat like have a little like enough texture to like not become like another like Compton's in the house like basic ass beat as that song did have. I felt like the performance from Ice Cube was pretty solid in this track here. No bars to highlight though, but I did enjoy the writing that was taking place here. You get a clear illustration of like of a drug dealer and his relations or her relations to their customers. And the chorus was solid. Was a solid home base for the song. It's very much like again, like kind of like we've talked about like in this review here so far, like a traditional like like of its time like hip hop chorus. Like it's pretty good, and I did enjoy when you get Eazy-E at the end of the track. I felt like that was pretty solid because like he's talking as from the point of view of being the dope man, so like I felt like that was pretty fun. And speaking about funny and fun, the end of the song was pretty fun, kind of funny, where the Crazy D raps, "Yo, Mr. Dopeman, you think you're sick. You sold crack to my sister, now she's sick. But if she happens to die because of your drug, I'm putting in your culo a 38 slug." So yeah, like in the way that's like came across, was like kind of like joking, kind of singing. Like that was fun, pretty fun. So yeah, with Dopeman here, I'm putting it into the good song bucket. It's just a fun song, and it's a good deep cut off the record.
Yeah, for me, the thing that got me first about Dopeman was the fact that for the first time in a couple songs we had a truly funky beat. Like, yeah, you could say that was the case with Compton's in the House, but let's be real, it was just a beat and nothing else. Here you have a beat with a little bit more, mirepoix on top, for lack of a better term. Like, there's a lot more flavor and seasoning with this. And also we get a Ice Cube that we know and love from the earlier part of the album, where he is delivering a very intense and heartfelt flow. And he just ebbs and flows a lot with the track. There are times where it feels like he is rapping very, very strongly, almost too strongly, like he's almost shouting at some points, but not enough to really like take the track away from what it is. And like you said, it's pretty much a look into the drug underworld, or overworld as it would be, where, you pretty much could see all the things going on, people selling drugs and the things they'll do to get drugs that don't involve money, and the consequences of such interactions. So I do like how Eazy-E became the quote-unquote dope man at the end of the song. And you mentioned that part at the very end. That's the second of two parts of the song that come following the chorus, where you get that little switch up at the beat, where it's just like this little like almost like tapping of the spoon type of like island beat that kind of switches things up. I did appreciate that a lot too, because it definitely switched up the intensity and made the listener listen. But ultimately, though, I am in agreement with you. The remix of Dopeman does go in the good song bucket, because it was a nice relief coming after I Ain't the One, again, for me personally. And it's just a solid track on the album.
So that being said, speaking about like solid tracks off the album, and I feel like we've gotten to the point in the review here, for the most part. I know I haven't revealed my bottom track off the whole record. We've kind of get into a flow of like the back half of the record. Like you get some like good like deep cuts, some good stuff. Like you found a stinker within I Ain't the One, and I have my stinker coming up here relatively shortly, because we only have 2 tracks left. So, but like I feel like we've gotten into like deep cut territory, and some deep cuts are they cut too deep. For lack of a better segue, I feel like we need to have some quiet on the set. And oh, hey, look, Matthew, the next track is Quiet on the Set. And Matthew, why don't you take this one off?
I will take this one. Thank you, good sir. So this track, the penultimate track, Quiet on the Set, it's another MC Ren track, and he definitely brings back a lot of polyrhythmic flow that even Ice Cube didn't really have on Dopeman. He definitely didn't have on I Hate the One. Because as we learned with, in particular, If It Ain't Ruff, Ren, when given the space, has a good solid flow that definitely showcases a lot of his technical style. And yeah, pretty much once again, he is portraying the nightmare in this song. He is trying to be sort of the Jason Voorhees of rap, for lack of a better term. Like, just sort of, being the monster that's going to strike whenever taken. He doesn't quite sound scary, but he does have a lyrical flow that is pretty impressive and convincing in all of its own. The beat is strong, too. It almost reminds me a little bit of yet another Public Enemy track, which was Caught Can We Get a Witness, which wasn't my favorite off that album, but the beat was solid. It's solid here, too, because it definitely has its sort of, like, early 70s shaft funk type of vibe. Once again, you get a very random and unexpected appearance by the Steve Miller Band on this track. I don't know why they want to keep going back to them, but I'm perfectly there for that. But yeah, Dr. Dre and DJ Yella do a very good job of supplying a beat. The lyrics themselves, again, they do follow that sort of horrorcore theme, but they are kind of random at this point. They just sort of like flow from situation to situation, don't really have a cohesive story like some of the other tracks did. But that's, again, not really the point. This is more or less just a Ren showcasing his stuff track, and I thought it was pretty solid. So, yeah, to me, Quiet on the Set firmly goes into the good song bucket, and I'm going to make a prediction that it goes into yours as well, or at the very least, is not your bottom track.
Oh, man. So I'm gonna answer that question here momentarily. Like, that bold prediction that you just laid out on the listener. But yeah, with Quiet on the Set, a lot of things that you talked about were pretty solid. I'm gonna just expand upon a couple different things. The beat here is pretty solid, kind of basic though, but not as basic as Compton's in the House. Like, it has the main elements of like drums and record scratches with like a faint guitar line. But yeah, it's a pretty standard beat. But what really sells me on the track, though, was MC Ren's flow. Like, it's pretty good. Very much enjoyed the performance. And also the way that, when Ren calls her quiet on the set, you don't get quiet on the set. Like, you get screams. Like, that was clever. I very much enjoyed that. But diving into some bars here that I did appreciate. In verse 1, you get the bar, I go to the party, I hop the spot. The way that the beat switches up there to reflect the flow is just so good. I very much appreciate that. And I very much appreciate that throughout the whole record as a complete package. And then in verse 2, I'm gonna highlight the bar like stupid, acting like a waiting for a bum rush, getting to the good spot. It tempts me so with temptation, writing my lyrics with this hyped information. Just the way that the beat switches up here to focus more on just the drums. Like, I thought that was pretty clever. I did appreciate that. And speaking about how the beat switches up in verse 3, you get a moment where they basically wink at the camera here with showing the original beat that Dr. Dre was working with in this track here. That bar is, now first we take a average drum, give it to Dre, and that boy gets dumb. Like, again, very much appreciate that. And then in verse 4, you get, I'm making obstacles of enemy traps to catch any MCs with weakest raps, crucifying in vain, like, just for using my name. That's just a just a great bar. And just overall though, like with upon further reflection, like the way that this track basically concludes at the end of the last verse, where it seems like it could have just honestly just been a closing track off the record, and that would have been perfectly fine because it basically almost kind of just wraps up everything because they do calls out to they do call out a roll call thing highlighting different members of N.W.A. and being like, hey, now that N.W.A. has delivered this package to you, like here's what we're all about, and that would have been perfect. But ladies and gentlemen, original sin exists for a reason, and yeah, this track unfortunately does not end off the whole record, but fortunately enough for you, Matthew, you are correct in your assumption because Quiet on the Set goes into the good song bucket, therefore is ineligible to be my bottom track off the whole record.
So the scorecards are about to be filled out once and for all, and I'm glad we kind of agree on Quiet on the Set. I think you might be a hair higher on it than I am, but I think we're both in agreement that it's just a very solid track that in some worlds and perhaps some countries could be the final track, but alas it is not. We are now at the final track, which is Something to Dance To. And since you have some thoughts, I'll go ahead and just... Actually, no, let's not do that. You gave me I Ain't the One first, so I will just be honorable and give you the thrashing that you would like to give to Something to Dance To.
All right, so it took multiple listens with this song here to really just drill down to a couple different reasons why I don't like it. I understand the original intention for this track here was to get N.W.A. on the radio. Like, this track was essentially designed to, like, get people, like, conscious of what, like, oh, hey, N.W.A. is a group? Cool. And then they check out the record and they just see, fuck the police, like, to, like, really try to get their name out there. And, like, I applaud him for that. But, yeah, the way that the song comes across, for the listener out there who has seen the movie Frank, and if you haven't, it's an excellent movie. Like, I highly recommend it. But there's a song, like, moment in there where the artist Frank is writing the most likable song ever, and Google, YouTube that clip on your own time, dear listener. It's an excellent clip, but it's very much like making fun of pop music, and like it's a fun song, but it's very much a crappy song. And I feel like this is basically kind of that with a flair of what I honestly thought of this afternoon when I was listening to this track. I thought of Auntie Donna, like the YouTube sketch comedy show, with like Everything's a Drum, Morning Brown, like basically like you get like the one thing that really made me hate this track, like in the first place, was just how empty and how tingy that repetitive lick was, where they were saying like, oh hey, now give me something to dance to, and they give you something to dance to. Like, I'm like, okay, this was annoying and like repetitive, please get out of my ears. And then like I do give them props for trying to be meta and just like trying to like talk about like different elements of the track and be like, oh well, this part sucks, well like, what about this part, man, what about this part, like I felt like that was clever, but I kind of got annoyed at that point. I got annoyed with it in that sense as well, because if you're gonna go with something to dance to, you're gonna really try to make like a good like hip hop track to really like get the listener into a track. There's other ways to do it, man. But I will say though, like like the random inclusion of like the sample of "Here I Come to Save the Day" was kind of fun. I'll give it credit where credit's due with that. And yeah, just the yeah, I don't want to talk about this track anymore. Like the only other thing I will say about this track though is that, just to give some context, was the the artist Arabian Prince. He helped produce this track here, and it wasn't originally going to be on the track listing as a whole, but they decided to include it. So yeah, bottom track off the whole record, Matthew. So I'm gonna let you take the baton.
Okay, all right, I will take the baton. And first of all, I would say our interpretations of this track are wildly different, because I did not see this as them trying to make a radio hit. To me, this is just sort of another skit type of track, almost similar to I Ain't the One, where it's just these guys going out to a club. It's just like, all right, well, we're at the club and we're doing club things, and I need something to dance to. Give us a beat to dance to. So maybe I didn't realize that they were going for a radio hit. And to me, on first listen, I almost had this in bottom track territory myself, if I'm being completely honest. Because that beat is just kind of there, kind of boilerplate, kind of just, very, hey, this is a dance song, and here is a dance beat, and aren't you dancing to this? But it's not that bad, and then when you get to that moment, like you mentioned, where they have the Mighty Mouse sample of Here I Come to Save the Day, I'm thinking, okay, this track is not taking itself seriously. It's here to be a joke. And this time, unlike I Ain't the One, I am here for the corn. Like, that's just a corny, stupid move that I can appreciate. So, yeah, like, to me, I got the humor of this one pretty quickly. And then you get the end part where it's just sort of sampling Sly and the Family Stone's Dance to the Music. Not necessarily cleverly, but that's a good song, and it does have its elements. So, yeah, I did appreciate the fact that this was the very rare appearance of Arabian Prince on this track, sort of throwing it back to the old days of N.W.A. It is a very weird choice for an ending track. It does feel a little pigeonholed, but it is what it is. I say this is an album track. I didn't hate it that much, but I can kind of understand where you're coming from with it.
Yeah, and like I said with I Ain't the One, not everything needs to be on a cob. Everybody's corn isn't everybody's corn. But there's one thing that I can say that we can all agree upon with this moment in time. We've journeyed out of Compton by N.W.A. by seeing 13 tracks that were brought up to the table, and those 13 tracks have been smacked down. Scorecards have been filled out. So there's only one thing left to say about this review.
We did it, man.
We indeed accomplished the journey, man. We went out of Compton N.W.A. style. So I'm going to go first with my overall thoughts and rating with this record here. I am very happy that we did this review here, because unlike whenever we did the Public Enemy review, I was a lot lower on that record than you, and I kind of was a little, I don't want to say I was afraid to go into N.W.A. And Straight Outta Compton, because I was just like, am I gonna really hate on another old school hip hop album? Like, am I gonna be that kind of a douchebag? Turns out I'm not that kind of a douchebag. You get legendary performances, legendary songs off this record. F the Police is legendary for its own right, and also some of the deeper cuts off the record, 8 Ball, for example, was a really good song. Something just like that. There's a lot of tracks off of here. Obviously, my top 3 is my top 3 for good reasons, and I can highlight those tracks for until the cows come home. But even tracks like Quiet on the Set where like you get some good moments. So like again, great performances, great bars, great album all around. Now, do I rate this album a 10 out of 10? Well, no, because I do have a bottom track, so it would be illogical for me to be like, no, this is truly iconic, man. I have a bottom track here, but you know what? Screw, like, something to dance to. I'm going to ignore that track. Well, it's on there, so I got to be honest with myself. And also, like, tracks like Compton's in the House, like, they kind of hold back the album's overall impact for me. But I will say though, would actively seek this record out on vinyl, and I very much do appreciate Straight Outta Compton a whole lot. So much so that I'm giving this album a strong 9 out of 10.
And for me, I'm glad we did this review too, because not only was this a challenge just because of all the lyrics we could not and will not say when discussing this album, it was also a challenge because, again, this is the first time in a long time that we've discussed 80s hip-hop, and not just the old school nature of a lot of the tracks that we talked about, like Compton's in the House or something like that, but newer tracks like Straight Outta Compton, The Police, and so forth. So you do get sort of this transitional effect throughout the record that is nice document. And most of the time the performances are great. Again, the first 3 tracks are great. Express Yourself was nice. MC Ren's solo tracks were very nice. His duets with Dre were very nice. This album does have a couple of flabby moments, like Something to Dance To, like Compton's House, and again, for me especially, I Ain't the One is just an absolute disaster of a track. But overall, this track is a very enjoyable introduction to gangsta hip-hop. It's very much a staple of 80s hip-hop, and I'm glad we talked about it, and it's a record I don't know if I would go as far as seeking out on vinyl, but that might have more to do with the price of vinyl than my appreciation of it. So, all that to say, I am going to go one slight step back from you, and I'm going to give Straight Outta Compton an 8.5 out of 10.
So, you're 9. What, my 9. And your 8.5 average out to be a 8.75 out of 10 because
Math
works for everyone. My next album recommendation here, it was a little hard because, like, I think if I enjoyed the Public Enemy album that we reviewed, like, that I've referenced several times throughout this episode here so far, that would have been the easy recommendation for me. But I didn't recommend that. I didn't enjoy that, so I can't recommend that because that would be psychotic, man. But yeah, I will recommend another album though that does talk about the city of Compton. Does have radio, designed like radio hits, I think. But also kind of dives into some gangster stuff, but takes a more introspective take on the whole Good Kid, Mad City element. And oh hey, yeah, that album that I'm gonna recommend is indeed Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar. Fantastic record. I actually think I'm due for a re-listen of that here relatively soon. But yeah, with Good Kid, Mad City, it's the album that kind of got me hooked on Kendrick Lamar as a whole. For the reasons that I kind of already illustrated, it kind of takes a more of an introspective approach to the whole gangster life and that hood life that some people experience. So yeah, easy album recommendation for me. So if you enjoyed Straight Outta Compton by N.W.A, check out Good Kid, Mad City.
My next album recommendation, first of all, thank you for bringing up Good Kid, Mad City. I am well overdue for a re-listen of that. But my next pick is going to be from Public Enemy, but it's not going to be the album that we reviewed. It's going to be the album I recommended based off of that review. And it is the successor to It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. And it is from 1990. That is Public Enemy's Fear of a Black Planet. Because much like this album, it has a lot of thematic elements of being a black man in the USA. Songs like Fight the Power, Burn Hollywood Burn, which, for fun fact, features Ice Cube, are on there. And just some really, really sick beats on the likes of Brother's Gonna Work It Out and Who Stole the Soul. Just a really, really good early hip-hop album that I cannot recommend enough. So Fear of a Black Planet by Public Enemy is my next album recommendation.
So, dear listener out there, to summarize, our average rating for Straight Outta Compton by N.W.A. was indeed an 8.75 out of 10. I recommended Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar. Matthew recommends Fear of a Black Planet by Public Enemy. So, you know what to do. You're an educated person. You got to this point in this review. You know that if you've enjoyed Straight Outta Compton by N.W.A, or if you haven't listened to it yet, what are you doing, man? What are you still listening to this review for? Like, we've basically kind of highlighted all the reasons why you should be listening to it. But if you did enjoy it and you're looking for other albums to check out those albums accordingly. So, yeah, man. What a fun review.
It was a fun review and a little bit contentious at times, but ultimately, again, I think we both were on majorly the same wavelength. And again, I give us both credit for not saying any of the cancel words that could have possibly made this the final episode of Hey, Listen to This. But it is not our final episode. There are episodes to be had in the future, and next week will be the final installation of our Black History Month series for February 2026. And Ryan, your turn to take us on this journey. What are we talking about next?
So, in interest in talking about my Bandcamp collection, as I did to start out this review here with Barty Strange, we're gonna go back into my Bandcamp collection. So we're gonna have some fun here. So the way I'm gonna have you pick between the two records that we could potentially talk about here on next week's episode is I'm going to have you pick a pattern, a color of what kind of represents the area that these two musical acts are from. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. Plaid or brown?
Okay. I'm going to go with plaid.
All right, man. So, we're going to be traveling to Scotland for our next review here, specifically Edinburgh, Scotland. And the group that we're going to be talking about next week on Hey, Listen to This is not Old Fathers, but Young Fathers. And we're going to be talking about their 2023 release that is indeed entitled Heavy Heavy.
I am even more lost than I was with Barty Strange. Let's party. Let's do this. Let's go to Scotland.
Oh man. So yeah, I'm 100% ready for to go to Scotland for next week's review, man. But yeah, dear listener out there, if you've never listened to Heavy Heavy by Young Fathers, make sure you check out that record before next week's review. That way you can have opinions about the record that we're going to be talking about, and then you can have opinions about the opinions that we're going to be bringing to the table. But yeah, man, just overall though, I hope with next week's review with Heavy Heavy by the Young Fathers, it'll give us something to dance to.